In a world where a billionaire's tweet can wipe out your net worth and a central bank meeting in Washington can render your mortgage unpayable, stability is just a myth. Stability is the cage they put you in so you do not realize you are being shorn like a sheep. The truth is, our entire modern society is built on a foundation of economic illiteracy. They want you to understand how to perform a task, but they never want you to understand how money works. Because the moment you understand GDP, the debt cycle, and the prisoner paradox in international trade is the moment they lose power over you. They need you to fear the word recession, so you will bow your head and keep producing. Today, we are burning the old map. We will see the world through the eyes of the 1%. We will decode the secret language of the market and show you exactly why the rich get richer while others struggle to survive. From the dark magic of fractional reserve banking to the risky game of global trade wars, we will peel back the layers of the biggest scam in human history. If you are tired of being an outsider in your own life, pay attention. The game is about to change and you finally have the rules in your hands. Hi, you are a human. At least I assume you are. You want stuff. You want organic food, a safe shelter, and let us be honest, a slightly larger television than your cousin has. But here is the massive, unavoidable problem that governs every second of your existence. There is not enough stuff. There is not enough prime real estate, not enough gold, and definitely not enough of those slightly larger televisions to go around. This is what economists call scarcity. It is the fundamental itch of humanity. Scarcity is why you cannot have everything, and neither can anyone else. If there were infinite pizza falling from the sky, economics would not exist. We would all just lie on our backs and eat until we died of happiness. But the pizza is finite. The wheat is finite. Your time is extremely finite. So now we have to choose. Economics is not about spreadsheets and dusty books. It is the study of how we make choices when there is not enough to go around. Every single day you are an economist, whether you like it or not. When you decide to hit the snooze button, you are making an economic decision. You are trading 20 minutes of potential productivity for 20 minutes of immediate comfort. This brings us to the most important concept in your life, opportunity cost. Every choice you make means not doing something else. Watching this video right now means you are not watching cat videos or learning how to knit. That is your opportunity cost. The value of the next best thing you gave up. Most people go through life only looking at what they gain, but the rich, the ones who play the game at a high level, they only look at what they are losing by not picking the other option. Moving to our next layer of the trap, why do we even bother talking to each other? Why do we trade? It is because of a beautiful and slightly insulting concept called comparative advantage. This idea suggests that even if you are the absolute worst at everything, even if you suck at coding, suck at cooking, and suck at folding laundry, you are still economically useful. Why? Because someone else might suck at those things even more proportionally than you do. Trade is not about being the best. It is about being the least worst at the specific thing the market needs right now. Specialization is the secret engine of wealth. If you try to build your own smartphone from scratch, starting by mining the lithium yourself, you will die of old age before you send your first text. But if you specialize in one tiny task and trade your time for the time of thousands of others, you get to live like a king. This is the mutual bribe that we call civilization. Now, let us take these concepts of scarcity and trade and put them into a coliseum. We call this the market. A market is not just a place with stalls and overpriced vegetables. It is any space where buyers and sellers interact to exchange goods, services, or even digital skins for a game on a Discord server. The one rule that makes every market tick, from Wall Street to the dark web, is incentives. People respond to incentives like lab rats to cheese. If a slice of pizza costs $100, you probably will not buy it. You will find a creative way to stay full on water and willpower. But if it costs $1, you will eat 7 slices and complain that they are too small. Lower prices incentivize buyers to swarm. Higher prices incentivize sellers to work through the night. This brutal back and forth creates the famous dance of supply and demand. Demand is simply how much people want something at a specific price. Supply is how much producers are willing to create at that same price. Where these two forces collide and stop screaming at each other, we find the equilibrium price. It is the magical number where everyone who wants to buy finds someone who wants to sell. Furthermore, we must address what happens when you try to ignore these rules. Imagine the government steps in and says, pizza is a human right, it shall cost no more than 50 cents. This is a price control. It sounds compassionate, but economics does not care about your compassion. At 50 cents, every human in the city wants 10 pizzas. But at 50 cents, the baker cannot even afford the flour. The result is long lines, empty shelves, and a black market where pizza costs $20 and is delivered in a trench coat. This is the first lesson of the invisible hand. It is not magic. It is just the collective math of millions of people acting in their own self-interest. The market does not care if you stubbed your toe or if your feelings are hurt. It only responds to signals of desperation and desire. In addition to that, we have to talk about the medium that makes this whole mess possible: money. Most people think money is that green paper in their wallet or the numbers in their banking app. But historically, money has been anything we could all agree on without punching each other. It has been shiny rocks, cows, salt, gold, and for a very weird few months, digital pictures of monkeys. What matters is not what it is, but what it does. Money is economic lube. It keeps the gears of trade from grinding to a halt. It acts as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, so we can compare the value of a car to the value of a cup of coffee, and a store of value so we can save our hard work today to buy a slightly larger television 5 years from now. But here is where the story gets dark. Because once you have money, you need a place to hide it. Enter the banks. Banks were originally just glorified warehouses for gold. You gave them your gold, they gave you a receipt. Eventually, people started trading the receipts instead of the gold because receipts do not hurt your back when you carry them. The bankers noticed something interesting: people rarely came back for their gold all at once. So they started doing something that would be called a scam in any other industry. They started lending out the gold that did not belong to them. They created receipts for gold they did not actually have in the vault. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking, and it is the foundation of the world you live in. You are not living in an economy of things, you are living in an economy of promises. So where does all this money actually come from? Most people have this mental image of a giant printing press in a basement somewhere churning out green paper with dead presidents on them. But that is old world thinking. In the modern age, money is not printed, it is typed. The real magicians of our era are the commercial banks. When you go to a bank to get a mortgage for a house or a loan for a new car, the bank does not take physical cash out of a massive vault and hand it to you. They do not even take money from someone else's savings account. They simply open a digital ledger, type a number into your account, and poof, new money is born. This is what we call the fractional reserve system. In the past, banks had to keep about 10%. But in today's reality, central banks like the Fed have dropped the reserve requirement to 0% since the year 2020. This means banks can technically create money with almost no physical safety net at all. Debt is not just a burden. Debt is the fuel of the modern world. Every dollar in your pocket is someone else's debt. If everyone on Earth paid off their debts tomorrow, money would simply cease to exist. But there is a catch. There is always a catch. This system works perfectly as long as people have faith. But the moment faith wavers, we face the ghost of the bank run. If enough people panic and try to withdraw their digital numbers as physical cash at the same time, the illusion collapses because the money was never there to begin with. This is why the government created deposit insurance like the FDIC in America. It is not there to protect your money, it is there to protect your belief in the system so you do not stop the music and crash the party. Furthermore, we must talk about the cost of this magic, which we call interest. Interest is the price of time. When you borrow money, you are essentially renting someone else's future productivity. High interest rates make capital expensive, cooling down the economy like a bucket of ice water. Low interest rates make money cheap, causing everyone to go on a spending binge. The central banks, like the Federal Reserve, use interest rates as a thermostat to control the temperature of the world. But as we have seen, sometimes they fall asleep at the dial, and that is when the real trouble begins for the average person. Moving to our next point, how do we actually measure the success of this giant messy machine? We use a scoreboard called Gross Domestic Product, or GDP. It is the total value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders in a single year. It is the number that politicians scream about on the news and the number that determines whether a country is seen as a powerhouse or a charity case. But here is the secret: GDP is a deeply flawed metric. It is like trying to measure the quality of a marriage by counting how many words the couple speaks to each other. It tells you the volume, but it says nothing about the meaning. GDP only counts transactions. If you bake a loaf of bread for your family, it contributes 0 to GDP. But if you buy a loaf of bread at the store, the needle moves. If a massive oil spill happens and the government spends billions of dollars to clean it up, GDP actually goes up because money is changing hands. It does not count unpaid labor, it does not count the health of the environment, and it certainly does not count whether or not you are happy. It is a microwave with no door. It might be working, but it is leaking radiation everywhere. To calculate GDP, economists use a formula that looks like a secret code. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Let us break that down into plain English. C stands for consumption, which is you buying shoes or going to the movies. I is for investment, which is businesses building factories or buying software. G is for government spending, which includes everything from paving roads to buying fighter jets. Then we have X minus M, which is exports minus imports. If a country sells more to the world than it buys, it adds to GDP. If it buys more than it sells, it subtracts. In addition to that, we have to look at productivity. This is the real holy grail of economics. Productivity is how much output you get for every hour of work. It is what makes countries rich. If a farmer can use a tractor to do the work of 100 men, that society becomes wealthy because those 99 men are now free to become doctors, engineers, or creators of slightly larger televisions. But when productivity stalls and GDP growth is fueled only by printing money and increasing debt, you get a bubble. And bubbles, by their very nature, eventually meet a needle. Furthermore, we must address the greatest enemy of your savings, the invisible thief known as inflation. Imagine you have $100 under your mattress. You feel safe. You feel secure. But while you sleep, the central banks are busy increasing the supply of money. Because of the rules of supply and demand we talked about earlier, when there is more money chasing the same amount of stuff, the value of each individual dollar drops. This is inflation. It is a hidden tax that requires no vote and no legislation. It simply reaches into your wallet and shaves off the edges of your purchasing power until your $100 only buys what $50 used to buy. The most common way we measure this theft is through the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. This is a weighted basket of goods like bread, milk, rent, and gasoline. But be careful. Governments love to tweak the contents of that basket to make inflation look lower than it actually feels at the grocery store. They might decide that if steak gets too expensive, you will just buy hamburger meat, so they swap it out in the basket to keep the numbers pretty. When inflation gets out of control, we enter the nightmare realm of hyperinflation. We have seen it in places like Zimbabwe, where in 2008 they printed $100 trillion bills that were not worth the paper they were printed on. That nightmare led them to reset their entire currency to a gold-backed system called ZiG just a couple of years ago in 2024. This happens when a government loses the ability to tax its people and decides to just print what it needs until the currency becomes a joke. It is the ultimate betrayal of the social contract. To fight this, the central banks use their primary weapon, the interest rate. By raising rates, they make it harder to borrow and spend, which slows down the economy and hopefully cools off inflation. But this is a dangerous game. If they raise rates too high, they trigger a recession, businesses fail, and people lose their jobs. If they keep rates too low for too long, they create massive bubbles in housing and stocks. It is a high-stakes balancing act performed by people in expensive suits who are often just guessing. Moving to our next point, we must zoom out from your local bank and look at the giant, high-stakes poker game played by nations. This is international trade. In a perfect world, every country would just make what they are best at and trade freely with everyone else. Brazil would grow the coffee, Germany would build the cars, and the US would design the software. But we do not live in a perfect world. We live in a world of borders, egos, and a psychological trap called the prisoner's dilemma. Imagine two countries, let us call them country A and country B. If they both choose to trade freely, they both get richer. It is a win-win. But if country A decides to cheat by putting a tariff, which is a giant tax on imports from country B, then country A can protect its own local businesses while still selling to country B. Suddenly, country A is winning more than country B. When country B sees this, they do not just sit there. They retaliate. They put their own tariffs on country A. Now both countries are blocked, prices go up for everyone, and the global economy slows down. This is the logic of trade wars. It is a race to the bottom where everyone loses because no one trusts anyone else enough to put down their weapons. Furthermore, we must address the concept of protectionism. This is when a government tries to shield its domestic industries from foreign competition. They use quotas to limit how much stuff can come in or subsidies to give their own companies an unfair advantage. While this might save a few jobs in the short term, it is like trying to stay warm by burning your own furniture. Eventually, you run out of chairs and you are still cold. Protectionism makes products more expensive and kills innovation, because local companies no longer have to compete with the best in the world. In addition to that, we have to look at the battlefield of currencies. If your country's currency is weak, your exports become cheap and attractive to the rest of the world. This sounds good for your factories, but it means everything you buy from overseas, like oil or technology, becomes incredibly expensive. Some nations are accused of currency manipulation, intentionally keeping their money worth less than it should be to gain an edge in trade. The US often complains about this, but the reality is that every nation is trying to tilt the board in their favor. Trade is not a friendly handshake. It is a relentless struggle for dominance where the rules are written by the winners. But let us take a break from the grand strategies of nations and look into the mirror. Why do you as an individual make such terrible decisions with your money? Traditional economics assumes that you are a rational machine, a creature that always calculates the maximum benefit and minimum cost. But as we know from the study of behavioral economics, you are actually a chaos merchant. Your brain is not a supercomputer, it is a bundle of ancient survival instincts that are poorly suited for a world of credit cards and stock markets. The first major glitch is what we call loss aversion. Science shows that the pain of losing $100 is twice as powerful as the joy of finding $100. This fear of loss makes us do irrational things. It is why people hold onto a crashing stock until it hits zero, hoping it will come back rather than just selling and moving on. We hate being wrong more than we love being rich. We are also victims of the sunk cost fallacy. We will sit through a terrible movie just because we already paid for the ticket. We will stay in a failing business or a bad investment because of how much time and money we have already poured into it, even when the rational move is to walk away. Furthermore, we are experts at hyperbolic discounting. This is a fancy way of saying that we want a small reward right now more than a giant reward later. It is why you spend your retirement fund on Uber Eats or a new pair of shoes today. Your brain is still wired for the savannah, where if you found food, you had to eat it immediately before a lion took it. It does not understand that in the modern world, the lion is actually the compound interest working against you on your credit card debt. In addition to that, we must discuss the herd mentality. Humans are social animals. If everyone on the internet is buying a digital picture of a rock or a coin named after a dog, you feel an irresistible urge to join in. You do not want to be the only one left behind. This is how bubbles are born. It happened with tulips in the 1600s, it happened with houses in 2008, and it will happen again and again. The market is not driven by math, it is driven by two alternating emotions, greed and fear. Understanding this is the first step toward true financial freedom. Because the moment you stop acting like a member of the herd is the moment you start seeing the board for what it really is. Now, let us bring all of this home. I want to tell you a story about two men. On a beautiful spring afternoon 25 years ago, two young men graduated from the same university. They were very much alike, these two young men. Both had been better than average students, both were personable, and both as young college graduates were filled with ambitious dreams for the future. Recently, these men returned to their university for their 25th reunion. They were still very much alike. Both were happily married. Both had 3 children. And both, it turned out, had gone to work for the same giant financial corporation after graduation and were still there. But there was a difference. One of the men was a manager of a small department, struggling to figure out how he would ever afford to retire. He felt like he was running on a treadmill that was slowly accelerating, and no matter how hard he worked, the finish line just kept moving further away. The other man? He was the president of the company. He had achieved total financial freedom a decade ago. He did not just have money, he had time. He spent his days making high-level strategic decisions and his evenings traveling the world with his family. Have you ever wondered, as I have, what makes this kind of difference in people is lives? It is not native intelligence or a talent for hard work. It is not that one person wants success and the other does not. The difference lies in what each person knows and how he or she makes use of that knowledge. The man who struggled spent 25 years working for money. The man who succeeded spent 25 years making money work for him. And the biggest secret he knew, the one the struggling man never understood, is the dark magic of the elites. How to use inflation to wipe out your own debt. But here is the real kicker, the secret that will change how you look at every dollar in your wallet. The 1% does not fear inflation. They crave it. Why? Because the elites are the biggest borrowers on the planet. They do not save cash like the middle class. They borrow massive amounts of cheap money to buy assets like real estate, factories, and stocks. When inflation rises, two things happen that favor the rich. First, the price of their assets skyrockets because of the supply and demand rules we discussed. Second, the real value of their debt shrinks. If you owe $1 million and inflation is 10%, you effectively owe 10% less in terms of purchasing power every single year. The poor and middle class save their money in a bank account where inflation eats it like a parasite. Moving into the year 2026, the US national debt has exploded past $38 trillion, and the interest payments alone are now swallowing more of the budget than national defense. This is a game where the currency is being devalued at record speeds. The rich short the currency by borrowing it and turning it into things that become more expensive. They are essentially using the theft of your savings to pay off their own mansions. Furthermore, we must address the ultimate survival guide for your personal wallet. If you want to stop being a sheep and start being a player in this game, you must change your relationship with debt and assets. Most people use debt to buy liabilities, things that lose value, and take money out of your pocket like cars, clothes, and gadgets. The elite use debt to buy assets, things that put money into your pocket. They understand that in a world of endless money printing, cash is trash and assets are king. In addition to that, you must master the art of the long game. You have to ignore the noise of the daily news cycles and the tweets from billionaires that cause the herd to panic. You must diversify. Do not put all your eggs in one basket, whether that basket is a meme stock, a single house, or a digital coin named after a dog. True wealth is built on a foundation of understanding macro finance, recognizing the cycles of boom and bust, and having the emotional discipline to stay the course when everyone else is running for the exits. As we conclude this deep dive, remember that knowledge is the only real capital you have. The systems of the world, the central banks, the trade wars, and the complex tax codes, they are all designed to keep the uninformed in a state of constant anxiety and production. But now you have the map. You understand that scarcity is a choice, that money is a social contract, and that the invisible hand is always moving even when you cannot see it. If you have stayed with me this long, you are already ahead of 99% of the population. You have the rules of the game in your hands. Now the question is, what will you do with them? Will you continue to work for money, or will you start the journey to make money work for you? If you want to continue decoding the secrets of the global economy and learn how to protect your family from the invisible thief, then do not just watch. Join our community. Hit the subscribe button, share this video with someone who is still sleeping, and leave a comment below with the word freedom if you are ready to change your future. The game is always on. The board is set. It is your move. This is FinGraphy, and we will see you in the next deep dive.